living organisms. Once you jump to ecosystem ecology, how a valley affects community structure or how a hilltop affects vegetation growth, that is the ecosystem ecology. Pond is a great example. Pond is an ecosystem. So if you visualize a rural part of India, there is a kacha sadak, kacha road, and it has some kind of boundaries of vegetation. That is one kind of ecosystem. Just next to it, there is a barren field versus there is a field with irrigation and crop growing. Those two are different ecosystems. Just little bit ahead, there is a farm pond, and that pond is different. It has its own abiotic and biotic environment components, and they interact with each other to create that. So when many ecosystems come together, they create landscape ecology. Now you can understand that one can study all kinds of ecology, but I'm limiting this to cell ecology. One can study, but we'll not start with the cell, we'll start with population ecology. It is the particular population of elephants. R. Sukumar, a great ecologist in India, studied elephants. He was a population ecologist. Community ecology is the more than one population or two population. So predator-prey relationship, lions and cheetal in Gir National Park. So those are the kind of community ecologies. So they are still looking at the living organisms. Once you jump to ecosystem ecology, how a valley affects community structure or how a hilltop affects vegetation growth, that is the ecosystem ecology. Pond is a great example. Pond is an ecosystem. So if you visualize a rural part of India, there is a kacha sadak, kacha road, and it has some kind of boundaries of vegetation. That is one kind of ecosystem. Just next to it, there is a barren field versus there is a field with irrigation and crop growing. Those two are different ecosystems. Just little bit ahead, there is a farm pond, and that pond is different. It has its own abiotic and biotic environment components, and they interact with each other to create that. So when many ecosystems come together, they create landscape ecology, the study of horizontal relationships among ecosystems. Ecosystem ecology is mainly vertical interactions within an ecosystem. I'll give you an example of landscape ecology later in the examples that. Then eco-regional ecology. Eco-regional ecology is at a larger scale. But this might come across as from what we call natural sciences. No, these are not just natural sciences. We have human ecology and social ecology. How human beings, humans as a species, and how a human being as a population, and how society as a community interact with their environment, and how do they study that? What that study is human and social ecology. Restoration ecology, the ecology for restoring environment. And the applied side of that is ecological restoration, which is in United Nations decade is going on from 21 to 2030 on ecological restoration. And many countries are onto it. Conservation biology doesn't use the word ecology in it, but it is a science that is important. Biological principles and concept as applied to conservation. And that is a very important discipline that many people may not be aware of. Plus, my favorite from to understand all these things together and how it affects our mind, the discipline of environmental psychology. I was very fortunate to be a student of stalwarts at the University of Michigan when I was a student there. And now I hope you can understand what is the difference between environment and ecology and why I'm using the plural, that is ecological sciences, and the word is ecologists. That is important for us to understand. There is no one kind of ecology. North America, they have started this called Wildlands Project. I won't go into the details of it. You can Google it and get to know more. So reconnect, restore, and rewild. But at a continental scale, they are doing gap analysis of patches and corridors where natural habitats are available and where the gaps are. So where the gaps are, they collaborate with the local community for eco-restoration. Even a small corridor of vegetation might be important. So this is at the eco-regional and landscape level kind of intervention that landscape architects, ecological planners, conservation biologists, many kinds of different expertise, even sociologists and artists are involved in this effort. So it is basically talking about this kind of thing where what do the species need? Food, shelter, and habitat, procreation. So this is what one can study like this, where things are found and where there are likely to be new development that are going to create fragmentation in the habitat. So suburbanization is affecting it. It might penetrate this forested corridor or green corridor, which is meeting the water corridor. And then there are hills in the background that supply the upper watershed, supply the water to the downstream areas. Each city, whether it is Lucknow or Indore or you name it, Coimbatore or my hometown, Vadodara, everywhere the upper watershed and the middle watershed are developing and they affect the downstream. Here is an example where a student, when I was teaching at North Carolina State University, did a project in Ghana, a small portion, and we did thorough GIS-based landform landscape analysis, which is just a small map I'm showing on the upper left. But this one is important. This is thorough landscape analysis will give us this darker high conservation value areas, medium conservation value areas, and low conservation value areas. We use different variables. This is development potential, high development potential, medium development potential, and low development potential. So when you combine these two this way, so these are the different layers of data that we have used. Same data, similar data, but to identify development potential and to identify conservation priority, conservation area. When we combine this together, we get this overlap. And this overlap tells us how to negotiate the policies and do community participation and all that, where development potential is likely to affect the natural areas potential, natural conservation potential areas. And that is what is this kind of process that we follow as ecological planners. So the focus was on tourism related development potential. So conservation values, high, medium, and low. So these are the policy recommendations for tourism development in that study area. Closer at my hometown, the Vishwamitri watershed, Pavagadh Hill is here. And this is our picture, the, the dream picture of how patches and corridors along the blue lines can be developed, can be achieved so that integrity of ecological structure and the fidelity of ecological function is ensured. This is like an ideal picture. Vadodara city is depicted here by the red line. And this is at the Vadodara city level, how that similar kind of the Bukhi Nala, Bojraji Nala, all this in the corridor of Vishwamitri can be studied further, and we can create a better network of open spaces and green spaces. This is an example of a national level design competition we participated in as our firm, a small firm. We are part of a consortium, and we were fulfilling the role of ecological planner and landscape architects. And it was a pleasure to work with Nimish Bhai Patel and Parul Javeri, their husband-wife architect team in Ahmedabad. Edifice is one of the largest multidisciplinary firms in India, based in Mumbai and other cities. And our firm were the partners in this design competition. So this is the map of, these are the different kind of landscape analysis maps. So this is the elevation map. So white part is the high point, and the darkest brown is the low point. And then we can see how the landform as a plan view. These are all the water gathering areas where different kinds of slopes will create wet areas in the landscape. Then these are the percentage slope. How steep is the slope? So this hill here, which is the high hill here, the steepest slopes. So we consider those also. And these are the aspects of the landform, north-facing aspects, south-facing aspects. So we can understand climatologically when we put a building in south-facing aspect, how much solar energy it will gain and what kind of windows and building design details we can do based on this kind of analysis. So then we make a comprehensive high, medium, and low suitability areas map, which is on the upper left-hand side. Then we make the landscape restoration plan or landscape enhancement plan first, and within which we then put the building footprint. So the on the bottom left is an example of how IIM Udaipur program requirement were based on all this kind of analysis or fitted onto this particular site. The right hand side portion is for the second phase of expansion, and this is just one view of our proposal. This is the project we had worked in some years, almost like 18, 20 years ago in Kenya, Wonder Valley Resort. And similar kind of process we went through. We've identified high, medium, and low suitability area for development. And this is the master plan. We always offer at least two alternatives. So this is one alternative that was selected by the client. Again, there is no time to go into detail of this. This is a third project. This was also a consortium. We participated with the same firms, Panika, which is Nivish Patel, Parul Javeri in Ahmedabad, and Edifice in Bombay. And this is the analysis work, and this is our proposed uh, master plan for the IIT Jodhpur campus. So all these things, from my first experience as a child running to that tree with my cousins, to landscape, ecosphere, environment, ecology, all these things that teach us that we are all interconnected. Not only because of the internet that facilitates this meeting, but in many different ways, we are all interconnected. So the lesson is never forget that the interconnectedness is a sacred thing. The sacredness of interconnectedness is what we interfere with. And what we create are not only fragmentation in the habitats, but fragmentation in our society and in our hearts also. So that is where the lesson is value this. This is a value. This is not just a scientific concept. So interconnectedness is important. And remember this, that ecology is about this. The interconnectedness is about all these things. And that is important. That our body is also all this network of blood circulation that is part of the human body and how we are all connected to other bodies. Recent research has talked about how from the root system, microorganisms and root system and all these things together help survive trees and vegetation and all kinds of flora and fauna in the forests. So sustainability this is another story that we are gulping. We think that sustainability is about equal portion equity, societal equity, economy, and environment. And we all clap. Yes, this is what sustainability is. But please pause and think, is it sustainability? Is something more important here than the other? GDP is the most important thing. And we saw in this small, short presentation the impacts of I didn't have to show you the slides. We all have experienced those stresses, those pollutions, those misery in refugee camps, and the GDP going to military budgets. All those things are going on there. But ultimately, our survival is not based on this kind of model. So sustainability is not sustainable. The second law of thermodynamics allow us to be sustainable. Sustainable is good. Sustainability is good as a heuristic, as an instigation to achieve something towards in that direction. But ultimately, even a soap that you put near a wash basin and you wash, can use it frugally and make it last longer. All Indian families do that. That is sustainable behavior. It is not the resource, it is what we do with the resource. That is what is important. So, the correct way to put it is like this, that economy is a subset of society. Economy is not something a gill lion is worried about. Economy is a human construct. So, it is a subset of the society. But economy and society both are subset of the environment. And this is how we need to understand it so that we can begin to correctly view the priorities. The priority is the environment. If the environment is there, the society is going to be there. And if the society is there, human society, I mean, the economy is going to likely to work out. So this slide is important. And this is from our Indian culture. This is not about Hinduism or any religion. So we call truth, Satyam. But what is Satyam from a scientific point of view? Satyam is the laws of nature. They are timeless, placeless. They do not change. Water will travel downhill. It doesn't matter which century you are talking about. It doesn't matter which country you are talking about. It doesn't matter what kind of governance system it has. Water will travel downhill. And on steep slope, it will travel faster. On a milder slope, it will travel slowly. That is Satyam, natural laws of nature. The Shivam part is the society part. How much well being, how much goodness we have in us, and how much goodness we are able to share. Even this diagram, I'll put it differently, but again, I didn't have the time. And because of these two, Satyam and Shivam, the natural system and the cultural system, we get the experiential quality. And Sundaram is not beauty only. Sundaram is the aesthetic experience, the aha that we get. Sundaram is where we don't think about the forest or the great scene that we see in the Himalayas or in the Western Ghats or along the coast of Orissa or wherever. Sundaram is where we think of the creator, not the creation, the aesthetic experience that we get. And we kind of become speechless. We kind of zone out. So there is a great song, old song of Mukesh that is one of my favorite ones, which goes like, Ye kaun chitrakar hai, ye kaun chitrakar. This song captures what Sundaram is. And this is what we need to be, bigger picture wise, we need to be worried about. That are we following the laws of nature? Are we doing something good for the other human beings, society? Are our decisions going to result in greater aesthetic experience? So, this is a quote from one of my favorite books, John Tillman Lyle. If all goes well, if our models are correct, our design work as it should, and if the management is both imaginative and sound, then human and natural process will merge indistinguishably into an organic whole, the human ecosystem in the best sense of the term. That, hard as it may be to achieve, is the ideal. Before I move to the last slide, let me just talk very briefly, very quickly about ecological self, ecological address, and ecological action. Joanna Massey is a great nature philosopher, and she gave the concept of ecological self. So this scheme, inside this is Shishir, right? You see this Shishir here. The space is my room. This is not Shishir. My family is sleeping in the other room here because it is whatever it is in the US. So the self, me, Shishir, my identity, my image, then I extend that to what? Then I extend that to, oh, my family, then my extended family, then my neighborhood. That is Shishir. Shishir is recognized. Shishir is known in Pratapganj. Shishir is known as with Baroda. Oh my gosh, my identity is now increased to Baroda. Then I go and say that, oh, I have been to secretariat in Gandhinagar and I've met the chief minister, or I do this and I do that, and Rajkot and Jamnagar or Vapi. Oh, so my identity is Gujarati and I'm Gujarati kind of person. No, 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 no. But how can I be only Gujarati? I'm Indian. So my identity is this national. So how much do you go through them? Okay, then I say, oh no, my identity is also US person because I've spent many years here. So this is all about me, 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 me. So if you look at that diagram of ecological system pyramid, you can identify from climate that my ecological address is, my ecological self and address is associated with subtropical climate, the landform resulting from Pavagadh Hill, Vishwamitra River watershed, within which Bukinala watershed, which is a tributary of Vishwamitri. Now I am identifying with that particular banyan tree or that particular imli tree or that particular neem tree. Oh, I'm part of that ecosystem. I'm part of soil, different kinds of soil, different kind of vegetation. These are different ways to identify my addresses. And my friends, my dear fellow Indians and other citizens, we are citizens of planet Earth. But as the author of Land Mosaic, Richard T.T. Foreman, once famously said, think globally, plan regionally, and act locally. So that is why this statement is important. That if we understand that our self is not just our identity up to our country or our family. Our identity is up to this planet Earth, the ecological self, how we relate with the other abiotic and abiotic components, non-human part of the ecosphere. So this is what is important. And the action, as I said, should be related to Sundaram, Satyam, and Shivam. And I gave you the examples of how this can be achieved, how this can be sensitively, creatively achieved. So this is what the wisdom of our Upanishad, Tamsoma Jyotirgamay, lead us from untruth to truth, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from death to life. That's it. Thank you.